in Rhode Island. Okay, I'll start again. Good morning here in Rhode Island. Good afternoon for a lot of other people. My name is Keister Groot. I'm the executive director in Rhode Island. I'm going to do the first workshop in the track related to invention education. And the title of my presentation is Glocalization from UN Sustainability Goals to Designing Equity in Your Community. I was hoping my phone would go off. I'm sorry about that. And I have the wrong presentation, sorry. I apologize. All right. So for today, please mute your microphones. If you have any questions or comments related to this workshop, use the chat feature. If you have broader questions, use the parking lot Padlet. There's a QR code that you can use, or you can use this link. And I was going to put this in the chat and I forgot to copy it, and I'm not going to be able to do that now. I'll do that later. This is the first workshop in a series of 5. You don't have to, follow the whole series along. You can just go from one track to another if that's more convenient for you, or if that's more of an interest to you. But I'm going to focus on going from global goals that the UN has formed to how can you take those goals and localize them, and particularly within the MESA work with students. Then that kind of sets up session 2, because we're going to focus on how do you find a client that has an equity issue that can be hopefully addressed with a design solution. So in session 2, we'll focus on interviewing the client and how to come to a particular problem statement. Then in session 3, we'll focus on the sketching and the prototyping. And then in session 4, Colorado is going to look at how have they initially implemented the invention education. And then in session 5, you'll have the pleasure of meeting folks from Oregon Mesa who have been doing this and spearheading this for nearly a decade. And so our sincere thanks go out to Oregon Mesa. There are 17 goals that the UN has set for global goals. And the goals that they have come up with seem to be sort of randomly organized. But as you go to the website, and I encourage you to do that, I will later post in the chat a link to my presentation so you can download it and you'll have all the links in there. So poverty, hunger, health, that seems to be, and quality education. If you go to the website and you click on one of these pictures, it will turn around and it will give you sort of a pithy goal statement, but then there's an opportunity to read more about it where you can get a lot more detail behind each of these goals from a global perspective. I found that it might be helpful to look at these goals more in clusters, related clusters that might be very helpful in the context of working with students in a MESA club or in some sort of a core structure. So what I did is I created 5 groups And in a little while, I'm going to give you some time to explore these goals in some detail in some breakout groups. The first four on top: poverty, hunger, health and well-being, and education. We have chosen in Rhode Island for next year as a cluster of goals that we're going to focus our MESA work on, and then eventually also focus our annual competition on that. Then I clustered together gender equality, reduced inequalities, and peace, justice, and strong institutions as a cluster of goals that I think might also be an interesting choice for a state to focus on for a year. Then below that, clean water and sanitation, climate action, life below water, and life on land. That also seems to be a very urgent cluster of goals that, you know, I'm originally from Europe, and I follow the news in Europe, and they're going through the hottest June on records all over Europe. They have a lot of trouble. So the climate and our care for the planet will be of a very, very high priority, if not now, very soon. Then on the left, the cluster of three goals: the affordable and clean energy, decent work and economic growth, and industry, innovation, and infrastructure. And you can think almost like those are not so easily locatable within a community, but it is really important to start learning to look at, like, how does this play out in the place that we live in? And I am not able to, I know I am. So on the right, there's a smaller cluster: sustainable cities and communities, and then responsible consumption and production. For example, sustainable cities in Providence, there's a lot of exploration of what's called vertical and urban farming. And I will give you a couple of examples of that later on. So later, when we break out, I'm going to break you out in 5 random groups, and you'll be investigating within the context of your state and your communities, these 5 clusters, and you'll just be looking at one of the clusters. So here in Rhode Island Mesa, we have decided that we're going to look at these 4 UN goals for next year. We're building this. We are certainly not having a complete curriculum, but we do have some ideas of where we want to go. I also want to explain to you that we exist exactly 1 year. We became part of MESA USA last year this time. So we've been basically sort of piloting some of these things, but we certainly have not run a whole year program. But that is what we're getting ready for next year. So we're a very beginning state. And so the advantage for us is that we don't have a lot of established curriculum in this area. And so we can kind of begin from scratch with this. So one thing we did is we looked at some facts that were related to these 4 clusters that are either located, the data that I gathered are either located in the capital city of Providence, where we are located with our office. And also that is the city that we are mainly focusing on in the beginning of our existence. And some of the facts are from Rhode Island as a state. So about 26% of the Providence population lives in poverty, 88% in undersourced communities, 31% of Providence children live in poverty, and 60% of students in Providence are eligible for free meals. As far as hunger is concerned, 1 in every 6 inhabitants in Rhode Island is food insecure. The Rhode Island Food Bank provides food for 54,000 people each month. The additional issue that has been arising in Rhode Island is that the USDA is planning to eliminate SNAP, a food assistance program, and this will leave an additional 11,000 people and 5,000 children without food assistance. So that puts a lot more stress on the community food bank and other organizations. 85% of the people with food insecurities are people of color. And then we looked at good health and well-being. Now, the UN goals focus very much there on health care and access to health care and the quality of health care. But we want to focus that a little bit more in Rhode Island on nutrition, and so and healthy nutrition, and also projects in which the students grow their own food at their schools. So 90% of the food distributed in Rhode Island Food Bank was labeled as healthy food. We're not quite sure yet what is understood by healthy food. As you can see, that can be a little controversial depending on how you view healthy food. 45% of respondents to a 2019 hunger survey reported being in poor or fair health, which means that they're not reporting being in good or excellent health. So that is a very disconcerting, excuse me, that is a very disconcerting number. And last is a quality education. And one thing I want to say about that is that in Rhode Island, they have definitely noticed a connection with students' overall health and their achievement in education. So in Rhode Island, there is actually a program that schools that have more than 40% of students eligible for free meals can apply for a free breakfast for everyone in the school, so not just students with free meals. And then they also found that even though they offered these free meals, students would often not make use of them because they would not come to school on time, because it had to happen, they had to have breakfast before classes started. And so they started to allow students to eat breakfast at other times than just before classes started, and even allow students to eat breakfast in class. And that has been improving overall students making use of free breakfast, and also they have been able to demonstrate increased achievement among those students. So then we started looking at, like, what are the organizations and businesses in Rhode Island that address these 4 goals that we want to look at. So now we're going to say, so locally, which are the organizations that can become potential clients for our students? So there is the Rhode Island Food Bank, and they service a tremendous amount of people in the state. But we also have foodpantries.org. That's a national organization that has food pantries in almost every state. There's Farm Fresh Rhode Island, which is focused very much on farming and farmers, and to bring local grown food to Rhode Island families. And then there is the Rhode Island Farm to School organization, and there's also a national farm to school organization, which brings food programs to schools, particularly where students learn to grow their own food. That's then being used in the school food program. And then there's the Rhode Island Healthy Schools Coalition, that also works very hard with schools to bring healthy food to students. The Rhode Island Department of Education is also very, very active. I mentioned to you the free breakfast program that is a funded program. And then some companies and community organizations, such as the Southside Community Land Trust, which is a community organization focused on urban farming. Gotham Greens is a commercial business that has a vertical greenhouse smack in the middle of Providence, and they grow all kinds of mostly lettuces and those kinds of things, and they are available in supermarkets and other places all over Rhode Island. And then in Exeter, Rhode Island, which is where I live, there is a company called Rhode Island Growths, and they actually are building 25 acres of greenhouses where they will grow food in an environmentally conscious and energy conscious way for all kinds of communities in Rhode Island. So these companies and organizations and community organizations potentially are clients for our students to go interview. And of course, that you will learn more about in the next workshop. But these are our local companies and organizations that, in our view, address these 4 very important goals. So what we have done, and this is just a draft, it is very much based on what they did in Oregon this past year, where they had a theme of harvest to table. So this is very, very strongly inspired by their work. And our working title for our theme is Healthy Living, Healthy Community. So we're going to ask student teams to identify a client, such as the organizations from the prior slide, in their community who brings healthy food and food services to our communities. Food is important for our identity, our culture, and bringing people together. So this is how we localize our goal for Rhode Island. Through an interview with their client, students will discover a challenge, their client experiences, and will use invention to create a product that addresses the need. And this will be dealt with in great detail in the next session, and also in session 3. So then and now will be more in the spring, they will pitch their prototypes at a series of community showcases and competition. And we hope to hold our state competition sometime next May. So of course we have, since we're only existing 1 year, we haven't had a competition yet where this is taking place. So I found from New Mexico last year, one of the teams, the Next Gen Academy team, it's a high school team from New Mexico. They actually did a project that would fit perfectly with the theme that we have set. So this is from their design brief. So I took a couple of excerpts from that. So they claim that 1 in 5 people and 1 in 3 children are food insecure in New Mexico. They have a Roadrunner food bank. It's the largest food bank in New Mexico. It was experiencing a volunteer shortage. This was, of course, during the pandemic. And so one of the things that was an issue is that they did not have enough volunteers to sort the fruit by hand. So they understood that as an opportunity for a design solution to create a more efficient way of sorting and processing food that came in to be distributed. So then they inventoried a problem statement into the kinds of increased efficiencies that that food bank would need, and they developed an actual prototype to do such a sorting of food more efficiently. And then they reflected on their process. They discovered that defining a single equity issue was difficult. Students, what we have learned from other states' experiences is that students tend to think way too big, and they have difficulty narrowing their thinking down to a achievable goal and to build a prototype for that. So that is definitely where they need some support and coaching. And so as they came to understand the role of food banks, they struggled to ideate and formulate a solution. This is, again, not unusual. And this is where, if you're a club advisor, this is where you can be extremely valuable to students. And they settled on a design that streamlines a tedious project. And I think the last reflection is we learned how to get involved with our community. That is what we're after with MESA. And I was so happy to see that Dr. McGee, sort of ended with that, with this sense of that if students could do anything, get paid, more than enough, if they could do anything, what would they do? And there was giving back to my community was sort of the theme in that. So this is very encouraging. So so here you can see, I know this is very tiny, but the picture on the right is a top view, and the picture on the bottom is a side view. So you can see that it's sort of a ramp. Then the fruit slides on this black strip, if you look at the top view. And then there is they use the Arduino with a sensor to sense the color of the item. And then if the color indicates that the item is spoiled, it will go to one side. And there's this little pointer in the middle that flips to the right or the left. And so that will then sort the food into a bad side and, and an acceptable side. So that was their working prototype. So let me see what time we have. All right, we're doing pretty good. My plan is to break you out in groups. Now I'm going to escape out of this presentation mode so I can share a link with you in the chat. Well, let me do that first. So I shared a link with you in the chat. That is going to be the presentation, the breakout group work. So, and you're going to need that to be able to do the breakout. So I already introduced the 5 clusters to you, that the goal clusters from UN. And so I'm going to organize 5 groups around that. And you will be randomly assigned to one of those breakout groups. So hopefully will be also a variety of different states in there. And then you use the Google slide deck, and on the second slide, these instructions are repeated, so you don't have to memorize them. And then group 1 will be using slides 3 and 4. Group 2 will be using slides 5 and 6. Group 3, slides 7 and 8. Group 4, slides 9 and 10. And group 5, slide 11 and 12. So, I will open it up and share that in just a minute so you can see what the expectations are. So actually, let me do that now. It'll make it a little bit easier. So this is the breakout group slide deck. Then on the first slide, record the local issues data from your state that are related to the selected cluster. So one of the things is that you may have 2, 3, or 4 goals in your cluster. I'm not saying that you have to do this for everyone. You can pick 1 or 2 of those, or you can decide, depending on the size of your group, to split out. To say, well, 2 of you 2 are going to look at this, you 2 are going to look at the other goal, and so on. You can decide that within your group and whatever has your interest, but use publicly available data through web searches. If something data is very specific to a state, then please, in parentheses, add the state abbreviation. So on the first slide, so let me just go to one of those here. So you double click in here, and then you can just type in your ideas. On this first slide, next to poverty, you put all your information here, and so on. And then on the second slide for the group, this is where you identify some of the organizations in the different states that you're from that might be addressing these and that could form potential clients. And then secondly, what might be some of the inequities that these organizations are dealing with? And then the last thing you need to do is to assign someone to be the presenter of your group. So then when I call you back from the different groups, that one of you can report out briefly. Oh, the link says view only. Okay, thank you. Let me change that. Okay, I hope that's fixed now. I set it to editing. Can somebody let me know in the chat or speak up? Okay, thank you. We're good now. So I'm going to stop sharing for a minute, and I'm going to put you into 5 random groups. And then in about 15 or 20 minutes, I'm going to call you back. Okay, you should be able to go. Yeah. Okay, so I've been able to sort of follow along, on the slides that you start to fill out, and I wasn't able to give you a lot of time for this, so I can understand if it was not always easy to find information really quickly. But it is a very good process to go through, within your state and within your community, to think about these things. So who's going to report out for group one? Just really briefly, what are the, just identify the main things you spoke about and you found.
I can mention, Case, that we jumped into just kind of doing searches for those kind of startling facts we had New Mexico, California, and Arizona kind of represented within our group. So I know that a lot of us kind of jumped into finding like those startling facts that were associated with each of the sessions. And then I think on the next slide, some of my colleagues had a chance to kind of input some information there.
Yeah. So this is for group one. Correct. Yes. So was there anything in that stood out that you found out? Did you say, whoa, I wasn't aware of that? Or any particular issue that you think is very useful in a MESA context?
I think to the level that we, for the time that we had, was just kind of this recognition of some great problems, right?
Yeah, right.
Great problems that are having an impact locally. And then kind of, I think, would need to kind of spend some more time looking at those organizations that might be in our communities that could help us to potentially identify or some solutions or some specific needs to kind of help those.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
And then group two is still typing. It can be kind of interesting, right? Well, once you start looking and then you see other links and, it gives you sort of a view of the scope of the issues that are taking place in your state. So anybody from Utah or Colorado or New Mexico? Yes, Jack?
Yeah, I can speak to some of the stuff I found on Utah, and then go over a little bit of the other stuff that came up. Do you want me to do that now or hold off until?
Yeah, just take a minute to sort of lift out a couple of things. Yes, please.
Yeah, so it seems like the Midwest is kind of all over the place. I'm not sure if, hey Misty, you may want to mute yourself. Okay. Okay, is that better? Should I go?
Yes, that's good now. Sorry, I muted everyone. There was quite a few with mics open, so I muted everybody. So now you can start fresh.
Okay, thank you. So it seems like the Midwest is kind of all over the place, but in general, places like Utah have it pretty bad for gender equality. Utah ranks consistently the worst state in the country for gender equality. On average, women make 30% less than men in the state, and fare poorly in pretty much every other metric that I could find. And it's a bit better in New Mexico. I'm not sure what that is relative to like the national average, but it's still not anywhere close to where we want to be, just generally. And then going over Colorado as well, there's a pretty significant gap between students of color and white students, as given by the data listed there. And then I don't know if anyone found anything for the UN Standard 16, but we didn't get a chance to talk about it much, so I might have to leave that blank for now. And then going on to the next slide. I think this is one that we are still trying to get to as well with the time we had, but the ACLU is always one of the better organizations to go to for this kind of stuff, and they've got a presence pretty much everywhere as far as I can tell. Oh, you're muted.
Thanks. So do you know of any maybe groups within schools that are dealing with equity issues like this, like student groups?
So
Yeah,
I'd found there's a list offered by the University of Utah of anti-racist organizations, and I was still going through exactly what those are and what they do. I can provide a link here to this page. I didn't have a chance to.
That's okay. I just, sometimes like organizations like national organizations like Civil Liberties Union, they may just be a little bit too big for kids to go to, but maybe local community groups that are focused on this might be more useful for them to deal with.
Let me see if I can find something, and I'll retroactively add it to the slide if I find it.
Yes, and certainly open invitation to everybody to keep adding to this. It certainly is of interest to me.
I'll see if I can find something, but I wasn't getting much for Utah. Colorado might have a bit better luck, or New Mexico, but I'll see what I can do.
Okay, so I'm noticing that it is that my time is up, so I apologize for not being able to hear the other groups, but we'll be able to view the slideshow because the slides with everybody's information, so it could be of use and of value to no matter what state you're in. I just wanted to summarize what I tried to accomplish today. Is I created clusters out of the Sustainable Development Goals from the UN. Then we investigated how these goals play out in states and communities, and I gave the example of what we are thinking about in Rhode Island. The next stage would be to identify organizations and places and organizations in your state and communities that address these goals in some essential way, and then those places form potential clients for the students. So then they learn to identify the potential clients in the organizations, and then the last step is to develop a theme out of that and a challenge for the year based on the prior steps. So that's the process that Walter Muehling, who's also in this session, and I are working on over the summer to prepare for next year. And in the chat, I put a link to this slide presentation, so you can download a copy if you want to use it within your own organization as a workshop. Feel free to do so. You're very welcome to it. And so thank you all very much for attending. And I look forward to spending some more time with you in other workshops as well. Thank you very much.
Case, thank you very much for organizing us all to contribute to that. I'm actually looking forward to kind of jumping back into the document and seeing all that's kind of there. I think that these global issues, when we can bring them to that kind of local context and have them become real for our students, I think hopefully that will kind of help them to continue to engage in that next step of kind of trying to find solutions that they can kind of create for their own communities. So really appreciate your work and the work of Dr. Muehling as well.
You're welcome. My pleasure.
All right.
Okay. Have a good day, everybody.